Okay. Hello. Hi. Hi, Ivan and Stella.
Hello, how are you?
I'm
Hello,
good. I'm
everyone.
good. So, hello. So, thank you so much for joining us. We've got a quite a crowd who's watching us on both YouTube as well as Facebook. Okay. So, before we start, maybe I'll just do a very brief introduction. I think the both of you don't require much introduction. Yeah. So, first of all, I'll introduce Stella Kon, who is the playwright of Emily of Emerald Hill, and of course, a multi-garlanded, much awarded playwright who's also written many other plays, including The Bridge and The Trial. Yeah. And I think has recently been involved in doing a lot of musicals. Am I right,
Yes,
Stella?
yes,
Okay,
musicals as
great.
well.
Right. So, Stella, where are you calling us from? You're in Singapore at the moment, right?
I've been in Singapore for the past 30 years, Alfian.
Okay.
Yes, so yeah, I'm still in Singapore right now.
Just to make that clear that
No,
this is a domestic broadcast.
a lot of people think I'm from
Yeah.
Malaysia, but actually I've been in Singapore for a long time.
Right, but you've lived in Edinburgh and London for some periods of your life.
Oh well, I left Edinburgh at 3 years old, but uh, but I did. I after that I was in
Yeah,
Singapore. I went back to Edinburgh rather briefly in the
I see. Okay, okay,
1980s.
and that was when you watched Emily by Margaret Chan, right?
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
very
yeah. Okay,
exciting.
fantastic. Okay, what about Ivan? Ivan is of course the artistic director of Wild Rice. Okay, and
Hi.
Ivan, maybe you want to tell us a little bit about how Wild Rice is doing currently during this pandemic period.
Uh, I think we're like hunkering down. It's trying to stay home, and
Mm,
um, we never planned to actually stream our shows online. But I think that when
right.
the circuit breaker came about, and things started getting quite depressing, we just decided that
Mm,
we really should play our part to stream our
mm,
shows online, and it's been overwhelming. I mean, the response to Stella's play, to a production that actually launched Wild Rice 20 years ago and
right.
also launched our theater just recently, has been staggering. I think we have about 135,000 views from all over the world. So thank you everybody for watching. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's fantastic. I think also it's reaching people who've probably never watched a play or never really been, to the theater before. So I think
Yep.
definitely in terms of, gaining some publicity for this play, which is such a Singapore classic, has been very useful. Okay. So without further ado, I'm just going to launch into a little presentation where maybe I can solicit some opinions, some thoughts from the both of you. Okay, so this is the first part of this chat, and then after that, we're gonna open up to Q&A. We'll just take all these questions from our viewers. Okay, so
Okay.
can we open up a little presentation that we have today about this Emily of Emerald Hill? There we go. Okay, for those of you who are just joining in, welcome to the live chat of Emily of Emerald Hill. It has been put online by Wild Rice and it's been running for almost a week. You still have time to watch it if you haven't. Tomorrow is the last day. And here we are having a live chat with both Ivan Heng, artistic director of Wild Rice, and Stella Kon, the playwright of Emily of Emerald Hill. Okay, so let's see the first slide. Okay, so Stella, do you remember this? This, I think, is the first ever production of Emily Emerald Hill, right? Would you like to tell us a bit about this?
Yes, yes. I wasn't in. This is when I was in Edinburgh, so I was very
Mm,
excited because the Chin San Sui phones me up from KL to Edinburgh to tell me he's doing
yeah,
this show, and it wasn't
right.
even in KL proper. It was in a rubber plantation in Seremban, so the
Wow.
logistics were complicated. But it
Wow.
was. But how successful it was! The
Mm,
KL newspapers give it wonderful reviews.
fantastic. So, did you ever manage to watch this production at all?
No, I never saw
Okay.
Puitin's production till years and years later.
Right. Okay. So, just for the record, right? So, this is the premiere of Emily Emerald Hill, and it was
Yes.
actually premiered in Malaysia. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so let's see the next slide. And then finally, after its acclaim overseas, Emily comes home to Singapore in 1985. Tell us a little bit about this, Stella.
Again, I wasn't in Singapore, I was in Edinburgh. And so I only heard through my dear mother writing excitedly to me and sending me lots of good press cuttings that Margaret Chan has presented it to the Arts Festival.
Right, in Singapore, yes. And eventually you did manage to catch Margaret Chan doing this role.
And by the way, she was 7 months pregnant at the time. I think she's a real female heroine to not let anything get in her way. Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
and then a couple of years later, or maybe the next year, my mother again phoned me and she says, "Oh, Emily I was staying in Edinburgh, right?" She phones up and says, "Emily of Emerald Hill going to Edinburgh." I said, "Don't bluff lah." I thought she's pulling my leg. But true enough, it was invited to perform at the Commonwealth Arts Festival in Edinburgh. So there it was in the own town when I was staying. And Margaret came with the crew.
Yeah.
When they ran out of furniture, they came to my house and borrowed my furniture.
Oh, wonderful. That's coincidental and so serendipitous. Yes, Ivan?
No, I wanted to say that Glen actually, I think, Emily of Emerald Hill is to blame for Glen's decision to go into the theatre, because he saw the production in 1985 when he graduated from Cambridge. And that production made him understand, because two of us were in, when we were in secondary school, we were involved in drama competitions, in ACS, right? The drama festival, our very own, where we were both writing and directing things. But this production in 1985, was the production that made him do a pivot. He had just graduated from Cambridge doing a history degree, and he called his mother in history, and yes, they had one of those phone calls. Yeah. Right.
Just like Richard and Emily inside the play. So yeah.
Yes.
And Ivan, you had that moment with your mother as well, right?
Yes, and this was in 1988 when I gave my mother my law degree, and so you can imagine. Yes, she's quite a strong woman. My mother, she is a woman of strong opinions.
Right. So both you and Glen have got your own Richard and mother dramas.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Art and
yes,
life.
we do.
Yeah.
Yes. Art
so
and life.
Back to Stella, Stella, after you watched Margaret, what was one of the first few things that you said to her after watching her performance? Do you recall? Not exactly.
I said, I don't quite recall the occasion, but I do remember saying at one point that I just wrote the words on the script, but Margaret has given it bright breath and flesh and blood.
Right. What a lovely thing to say to an actor. Yeah. Great. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Now we fast forward to 1990. Okay. And Chin San-sui, who had directed Liao Hui Tin, now directs Pearly Chua. And if I'm not wrong, actually Pearly Chua is the one actress who has done Emily the most number of times. Is that true? Ivan, would you like to contest?
No, I don't think no contest. I don't know how many times Pearly has done it, but I watched Pearly in 1999. Yeah. I mean, I've done I've done 134 over 20 years. I think she must have, but all credit to Stella for writing a classic.
200th performance celebration. So yeah, she has stepped into Emily's Kasut Manik many times. Yeah.
Even more than in Singapore. With Chin San-sui's productions with his different actresses have brought theatre to people who never seen it before. Apparently, one old lady came out in Sarawak, I think, came out saying,
Oh, wow.
if this is theatre, I want to see more.
Fantastic. Yay. That's great. Yeah, yeah. And I know she's been performing in different venues all over Malaysia.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, Radisha.
She performs in very small, intimate spaces like a restaurant, a clubhouse.
Yeah, and she brings it on tour. Fantastic. Let's see the next slide. Who do we have next? In that same year, a Mandarin production of Emily of Emerald Hill. Yeah, this was performed by Jalyn and directed by Untitled. Did any of you manage to watch the show?
Of course I did.
If
I was in Singapore, of course I would watch it.
Right. And
it was
how did you feel about it? Okay.
Among other things, this translation into Mandarin was, I think, done by Tan Beng Luan, and they follow the Guo Bao Kun ideal of translation that you don't, for example, you don't say Jia Fei Tian, you say Kopi Tiam. Using local Mandarin equivalents. So that's what we translated. Jalyn Han's performance was different again from any I'd seen before, in that she channeled, as it were, the scared little girl, Emily, whereas Margaret presents a great society hostess. But in Jalyn's performance, you notice the scared little girl thrown into the gutter, fighting to survive. So each actress has something different.
Yeah, because I feel like the text is so rich also, and there's so many different Emilys in different stages within the text itself. Yeah, so it gives a lot for an actor to chew on. Okay, next slide. Let's see who's next. There we go. So for the Esplanade's celebration of 50 years of Singapore theatre, we had Karen Tan, and this is directed by Aidli Mosbit. Yes.
Aidli Mosbit,
yes. Who's from both a Malay theatre as well as an English theatre background, right? Yeah. And I find it so interesting that this play has been directed by a multiracial cast of directors. So you had Max Blond, who's Eurasian, Chin San-sui, who's Chinese, Aidli Mosbit, who is Malay, and Krishen, who's Indian. So you have written a truly Singaporean play style.
Well, I've yet to see it. I've yet to see a Singaporean Indian Emily, but it may happen.
Right. Yeah. So this was. I was mentioning mostly the directors. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying why shouldn't the actress be multiracial?
Right. Yeah. We should
not forgetting Glen, who is Peranakan.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Next slide, please.
Yeah.
All right, and now we come to Ivan Heng, who did this role in 1999 with Krishen, and later on it was revived with Glen Goei. So, Ivan, do you want to talk a little bit about how you and Krishen decided to do Emily?
Actually, I saw Pearlie's. It was in April 1999 that I saw Pearlie's performance at the British Council in Kuala Lumpur, and I was stunned. It was mind blowing. It was one of those moments where I think where I recognized myself. I always thought myself as Chinese, but I never really thought of myself as a Peranakan. But suddenly listening to this story and understanding Richard's story and understanding the rituals and seeing Wakalua and the way you soja, because at my home, we take it for granted at Chinese New Year. I kneel to my mother and I say, I don't think of, because we don't dress, and we don't speak the patois anymore. But suddenly I felt my entire, it was just electrifying. And when I left the theater, I was kind of, shaking. And I felt very touched, but at the same time, I felt that this was a story that I wanted to tell.
Right.
And and I basically called up Krishen and said, I want to act in this. Will you direct me? And then he said yes, and so we decided to call Stella, and Stella said yes. So that was a journey that, basically, helped me. I was seen, I was affirmed. My life experience was on stage, and suddenly, and that was amazing. And I was I didn't have a theatre company then. I mean, it was my friend's Drama Lab in Kuala Lumpur who produced and presented the show, Drama Lab, Zahim Al-Bakri and the whole team. And, with the agreement that I would launch a theatre company. And so, I even discussed with Krishen what to name the theatre company. And, and we decided on Wild Rice. So Wild Rice was launched in 2000 in the Jubilee Hall at the Raffles Hotel.
Yes.
Right, with the production of Emily, right.
Yeah.
I find this interesting because Stella's Emily first made a trip to Malaysia first in the form of Liao Pui Tin, and then came to Singapore in the form of Margaret. And in a way, you followed those footsteps, Ivan, because you premiered Emily in Malaysia, and then after that you came. Yeah. So in a sense, like history, the production history of the play repeats itself.
And Pui Tin actually came. Pui Tin is a dear friend, and we didn't know how about Old Kentucky Home. So I called her and said, "Will you come to rehearsal?" And she taught me the songs. So she taught me how to sing the songs, and it's a beautiful thing, to be able to share that with the first actress who ever, who originated the role, so to speak. Yeah, it was beautiful.
And it's like oral history, right? She sort of like transmitted that song. Yeah.
And what it was like
so
to
let me
perform.
jump to this next thing, which is that some commentators think that you acting as Emily is a bit of stunt casting, because obviously this play is written for a female actress. So I want to pull up the next slide where we take a look at Wayang Peranakan. Oh, sorry, this next slide is Gathering Emilys. Okay, by the way, here we see some of the previous Emilys all coming together.
Wow, Alfian, you have done your research.
a little bit, yeah. It's all out there. But you can see, all of them assembled for some occasions. There's a work by Saw Tiong Hin, which he did in Penang. So that's the pink poster. We have Liao Hui Tin, Pearly Chua, and Neo Swee Lin. Up there, there was a special exhibition by the Peranakan Museum about Emily on Emerald Hill. And of course, we see you, Ivan, and Neo Swee Lin, and Jalyn Han, and Stella, and Pearly as well. Okay, let's see the next slide. Wayang Peranakan. There we go. Okay, so I just want to sort of surface this, which is to say that in some ways, your portrayal of Emily, an actor portraying this female character, is connected to the roots of Wayang Peranakan, where, as you can see, the cast members, the male ones, are cross-dressing female characters. In this picture, there's the cast members posing for the play, which is called Janda Kaya, which means the wealthy widow, and this is in the 1950s. Okay,
like Emily.
Next slide, please. We see more pictures of Wayang Peranakan. There we go. On the left, we see a play which is called Pilih Menantu, or Choosing a Daughter-in-Law. That's by Felix Chia. In 1984. So I find this interesting because in that year, it led to a revival of Wayang Peranakan. And that was like around the same year in which Emily of Emerald Hill also emerged. So one can sort of like trace, in terms of the theatre, in the mid-80s, you had all these Peranakan plays suddenly re-emerging. And then you had a revival of interest in Peranakan culture as well. On the right side, we have one of the plays done by a very active Peranakan theatre company called the Gunung Sayang Association. So again, we see in Wayang Peranakan, the men would cross-dress and play certain female roles, like the Cantonese ama or the matriarch of the family, for example. Okay, next slide, please. You want to look at some famous, here we go. So, a group shot of cross-dressing actors of Wayang Peranakan. This is in the 1950s. And as you can see, standing left to right, they are all men. So it's Eddie Lin, Timmy Tay, Francis Hogan, and the seated is Mr. Gan Tek Hock. Okay. Ivan, or Stella, do you want to talk a bit about why men would do these roles rather than the women in the wayang peranakan?
This is for Ivan, I think.
That's no, not respectable, right? Really not respectable for a woman to be treading the boards. Yeah, it's like only low class, only prostitutes would do this, right? Prostitutes and actors. So same as in Shakespeare's time, right? That judgment that But I think the interesting distinction between drag as we know it today and the female impersonation in the wayang peranakan is that these men did not parody women. So they really tried to portray women, their feelings, the what they were going through, So it is a very kind of different take. They were not kind of making fun because they would have been making fun of their women folk. So it was a kind of different take. And I think that, but at the same time, they were performing archetypes, right? So, like the fragile heroine, the Cantonese maid, the matriarch, the cruel mother-in-law. Yeah, all these are archetypes, which I think it's very interesting because Stella, having written this play of a life of a little girl from the age of 14, to when she's sitting demented on her chair, Emily is every single one of these women, from mother to mother, to grandmother, to little girl, daughter, to friend. So it's a very interesting thing, and but I think that when Krishen and I started it, we were Stella has written a political play. She's written a play about, it's a wonderful story, but also it is a story about a woman finding her place, and wanting to be seen in a man's world. Right. And Krishen and I decided that it would be, that we would explore the politics of gender through having a man playing this role. And it's completely ironic, profoundly ironic, that, it's a man saying, before my breasts were grown, I learned that a woman is nothing in this world that men have made, and of course the theater thrives on dramatic irony. And I think that's why this version has a particular cutting edge. Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So I want to maybe look at some of your predecessors in wayang peranakan. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
It's very famous GT Lai.
Yeah.
Who's done wayang peranakan, often in the role of the matriarch. Yeah. He's born in 1939. He's a member of Godong Sayang Association, and is a playwright and authority on Peranakan culture. So Ivan, did you consult GT Lai when you were researching?
Yeah. We went to. He was in Malacca, and he's a tiny man, and with a French puff on his head. He's like the beautiful, generous soul, the Quentin Crisp of Singapore, and he immediately said, "Oh, don't go and make new ones. Save money. Kabaya, I'll lend you my baju. I'll lend you my kabaya." And of course, I'm double his size, right?
Okay.
But GT, was so, basically really kind of taught me all these customs, the way we soja, the way we pay our respects, and he says like, in Singapore, we don't kneel, we don't have our knees on the floor. So basically you have to just squat, because itu bukan orang Singapore, that's not us. So all kind of very specialized ideas. It's like, this is us and that's not us. So there was a certain kind of exclusivity and a certain pride, which was very fierce about him trying to guard the culture, how to fold the handkerchief, how to walk, how to, it was a very eye-opening experience. Yeah. But I think, a consultant, but at the same time, and then I met, Baba Peter Wee. I met so many Peranakans, like so many specialists, until I felt so, at one stage, very trapped. Like, I felt like the burden of this culture. And and I was really, stuck in it, and I realized, that I just really needed to sit in the lap of the culture rather than worship at its altar, to really kind of try and bring to enjoy it, and kind of find my Emily, that already had all those, all the physical things and all the accoutrements, the jewelry, the makeup, the hair, the gasot, everything, and to just put that all aside and then dive deep to the woman that she is,
Right. Yes. Because I think the play is also this very complex psychological study, and I think if you're too worshipful of, let's say, the material culture, then you turn it into a museum piece, and you don't want that, right? That is not the focus on the play. Actually, it shouldn't be this kind of like moving diorama of Peranakan culture. Okay.
No.
Let's look at the next slide.
Yeah.
So another famous Peranakan female impersonator. Next slide, please. There we go, Francis Hogan. He's born in 1936. Look at how beautiful he is there in the black and white photo. And then he adopted the nickname Bibik Dondang Sayang. So Dondang Sayang is that musical form consisting of repartee between singers where they sing pantun to one another back and forth. Yeah. Ivan, did you know Francis? Yeah.
He's famous, but my mother knew him before I did. So she used to watch his shows. And when they were living in the East Coast, and she's like, oh my goodness, she was like, Francis is performing, and it's like, these actors were really household names that drew an audience. So Francis is still around, and Francis still does shows, So and he still gives talks, and he's also a very, very beautiful person. That has that keeps the culture alive just by being himself, just by playing and enjoying himself. It's amazing.
Right. Wonderful. Next slide, please. And this is another person that you consulted, Ivan. This is Baba William Goei, a consultant of Peranakan culture. He's written books like Mas Pulo, A Baba Boyhood, and A Nyonya Mosaic. And then in your diaries, you had written, this is not, I read your diary, your diary entries were in the program notes. Okay, where you shared with us that Baba William Goei had taught you how to kneel, how to walk, sit, tie the sarong so it won't fall down, and carry the handkerchief.
That was it was both Baba William Goei and GT Lai. Baba William Goei, more these things are like the periak, how do you actually greet, the various salutations, the way you would carry yourself, and the atmosphere in a home, his knowledge is encyclopedic, and he actually wrote a Baba dictionary, which I think is a gift to Singapore. So yes, he did. So at every step of the way, and more in more modern times, then there's Baba Richard Tan, right? Who continued this idea of being a consultant as to what you can or can't do, and what you shouldn't do,
Peranakan Council of Elders, right? That you
don't cross your legs, it's like put your legs together and slip it to this, it's all these little things. All
the cultural etiquette. Okay, I think we'll move on to our final slide, I think. Okay, so I just also wanted to just put this out there that in addition to Stella's work, I believe that Emily or Emerald Hill for you, Ivan, is also part of this series of works that you've been doing with Krishen. And I would say, I would almost call it a trilogy, that you started with M. Butterfly in the year 1990, where you cross-dressed in the role of Song Lin. And then after that, it continued with you playing Emily, and it continued with you playing the character of the Tai Tai in The Visit of the Tai Tai.
And I think that one of the things that we actually discussed was David Henry Huang's line when he in M. Butterfly, when he actually said, only a man knows how a woman is supposed to act.
It's interesting. Sorry, Ivan, I think you're on mute. Ivan, you're on mute.
Sorry.
Okay, yes.
So it's David Henry Hall's line, which basically said only a man knows how a woman is supposed to act.
Right.
And we carried that, so so you're supposed to be, not too confrontational. You're supposed to be submissive. You're supposed to look after the family. All these codes of behavior that are, as Stella has written, the roles which are created by men. You see, and it's the links are quite profound. Yeah.
Right. Okay, thank you so much for that, Ivan. So I think it's interesting that gender politics has been definitely one of the things that you've been exploring as an artist. Yeah. Okay, we are at the halfway mark, so I think this is really a good time for us to open up to some of the questions that we've been receiving. Okay, so please send us your questions, everyone. You can type it into the comments box, whether you're from YouTube or Facebook, and let's see some of the ones that have come in. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Okay, I have a question for Stella.
Yeah.
This question is a tricky question there. Axel Gal would like to ask Miss Kon, which actor do you think did Emily the most justice?
No,
you
because just now, Alfian,
Ivan, yes.
Alfian, you said that
yes.
Emily is such a rounded character, or rather a so multifaceted character. So it's very difficult. Each actress focuses on one facet rather than another. It would probably not be possible to do all the facets together, because you just get a horrible mish. So yes, there are so many facets, and each actress does her own version. Right. I could go into detail for each actress what they do, but this might not be the time to do it.
That was a good answer, Stella. I think you mentioned once to me that it's impossible to even try to rank them, right? Because they all bring something special and unique to the table.
It's almost like you give me a bowl of fruit, of apples and oranges and bananas and pears, and ask me to rank them. I can't.
Right, because they are apples and oranges. That's right. You can't make a fair comparison. Okay, I have another one here for Ivan, actually. Tangerine breath. That was a nice segue from fruits to tangerine breath. He or she would like to know, I would love to hear more about how Ivan playing Emily put him in touch with his Peranakan roots. What were some of the things that he remembered from childhood that came to life as he was playing Emily?
I remember the conversations my mom and my aunts would have at the table during lunchtime. It was this was my dad's sisters and all the women really. So like Sunday lunch, right? So Sunday lunch was a big event where the whole family gathered, and it was very interesting because the men would eat first. And then after that, they would leave the table, leaving the table and having the women and then the children eating. And so that was where I sat down and listened to the stories of the women. And that's, so that's one thing. I mean, in touch with my Peranakan roots. And then, of course, babi wakloa, something my mom cooks, and it's breakfast on Chinese New Year's Day. On Chinese New Year, on the first day of Chinese New Year, the family sits down for breakfast because we would usually go full day of visiting. So for breakfast, we'd sit down to a full meal. And my mother would have spent days cooking the wakloa. And, when I perform this, I also ask my mom, and it's very interesting because Stella's recipe of wakloa is very close to my family recipe, right?
Okay, right.
and it's a full meal on that table, you know. So I mean, those are, and then of course, you know, we'll kneel to our grandparents. So all these things, I think, made me remember. And you know, I remember my mother used to have, you know, used to dress up. So she had kabaya, but she also had gowns. You know, my father was a army officer. You know, and you know, they used to entertain, and she would go out to events in a ball gown, you know, and so it just really reminded me about how cosmopolitan, you know, we are, because you know, my mom would wear, you know, gowns, and then, you know, she'll wear a sari, or she'll wear a, you know, kabaya, or she'll wear a salwar kameez, you know, and we just really borrow. It's all a celebration of who we are, you know, and I think that's what we do. We borrow, right? Yeah.
And adapt and all that, right?
Of course, the whole ACS experience, lah.
The Anglo-Chinese school. Okay, I have one question for Stella right now. It's an interesting one. For Miss Kon, was the whole play based on a true story?
It's definitely not based on a true story, but it is based on a true character. So the character is my grandmother, who was, perhaps you could say, a multifaceted person like that. She could be a charmer, she could be a manipulator, she could be the one who scolds the servant up and down, and to browbeat the children, all for their own good. But that's the character. But all the details of the life history were either totally invented or lifted from somebody else's life.
Okay. So, yeah, I suppose, I mean, it's fictional, but as with many things in life that we call fiction, a lot of it.
Yes, so much of it is exactly as Ivan says. If you sit and listen to all the aunties and amas gossiping, you will hear every element of those stories coming up. Yes, Ivan?
Yes, yeah. who was having a, you know, mistress, and you know, Amber Road is famous, right? That's where all the new condominiums were, and that's where rich men kept their mistresses, and then later on Stella has actually written a document of our history.
Of that aspect of history.
Yeah.
So I think this is good advice for all artists, whether you want to be a playwright or an actor. Learn how to eavesdrop, right? It's a very useful skill.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of your material comes from. Okay. One from Ivan here, from Isabella Kwa. Ivan, what was your greatest challenge preparing for the performance?
I think it's just I prepare for this role like every other role, actually. I read the script, and then you observe life around you, and then you imagine it, and you try and imagine what it must have been like, and you speak to as many people as possible, and then after that you gotta claim it. I think that I don't know. I mean, you know, physically it's very taxing. Like at the recent run, I did 24 shows, and you know, and every show, and although we cut this section in the on the recording where I'm out there, you know, interacting with the guests in the Cheongsam, actually there is no break for me. So for me, it's 2 hours and a half from beginning to end, and it's like running a half marathon. And the idea really, I think, is how to completely, you try, right, as an actor, to just inhabit this character. So, you know, my day as an artistic director is usually very busy, but I have an amazing team at Wild Rice who kind of look after me and know that when I'm performing, they try not to disturb me. And so it would be a strange day that starts at about noon, and I got 3 hours to kind of answer questions and make decisions. And after that, about 3 o'clock, 3:30, I stop. And then it brings this whole idea of relaxing and getting ready. So it's a big journey and then makeup starts at 5, and it's like you got to let go of yourself. You got to lose yourself. You got to those are the journeys of any actor, I think.
Right, yeah. And be in that zone, right? The minute you come on stage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
One for Stella now. Thank you so much for that, Ivan. Talking about active preparation. We see one for Stella. And this is interesting. I'll read it out, Stella. Stella, what do you think of non-Southeast Asian companies adapting Emily? For example, South African or Indian with their respective colonial histories.
Definitely, it's been done. It's been done.
Wow.
People in what city is it? I think in Chennai, they translated it into Kannada. Another lot in Mumbai, they did Khatija of Kambali Terrace. They used our script, our English script. They changed all the references, the street references into their own streets and ACS or whatever their equivalent is. I think they just deleted Chinese New Year sequence. And apart from that, apparently the story resonates very deeply with them. All where we have Singlish and Singapore Chinese Malay, they have Anglo-Indian. The overlaps with colonial history, the dishes, of course the dishes, they substitute their own dishes. So both the substitutions and the parallels were so very interesting. That's Khatija of Kambali Terrace.
That's wonderful.
As for South African, I don't know. Should they approach us, we'll have to talk about it, see what they want to do.
Right. No, I mean, it's so fascinating because we're talking about that kind of like Anglophone culture, certain elite class, and I think it's an interesting thing because I think there's this complexity about maybe a certain nostalgia for the empire.
Yes.
Also, because they were the favored ones, right? The Peranakans were known as the King's Chinese, for example. So they did prosper and thrive under British rule.
And isn't it interesting that although the empire is gone, we post-empire Commonwealth societies feel a link to each other through these things we have in common.
That's right.
Yes. I think that I mean, we know that
the Commonwealth
is not so common in the Commonwealth.
It's nice one.
But we do know that
they're rather common.
Yeah, we do know that that it has brought us together because of this, and in many ways, kind of the resistance, right? Kind of to decolonize and find ourselves and find our voice and our independence into that is a very kind of inspiring force. Yeah.
Right. Okay, I'm just looking at a lot of questions are coming in. So let's see this one from Grace Ho. Back to Ivan now, yeah? Ivan, how different was it playing Emily the second time around over 20 years later?
Yeah, I think this is
like the first time you stepped into those beaded slippers and then now. What has changed? Yeah.
I think Krishen and I, if you were to watch the recordings of the first Emily, I think that there were more sections in which I commented. I commented. It was like much more of the alienation effect, where you could actually see that I was a man playing a woman, which was a startling effect. But I think that was the product of the fact that I was the first man to play something, and then Krishen and I were out to prove something. Then of course, when Glen took over and he decided that I would play the Esplanade, that's in the 2,000 seat theater. Again, it was like, that was huge, and she said, "Oh, you can do it, come on, time to let's move it to the next level." But playing it, again, I think that's kind of, I think a bit us again trying to change. We're never satisfied, right? It's always this kind of divine dissatisfaction. But playing it at the new theater, at the Ngian Kongsi Theater, the one quote that Glen gave me very often in his direction was, you don't have to project, you don't have to act, you just be. And it's a very, I think that this kind of created something a bit more vulnerable and fragile. And I've never watched the recording until the night it streamed. I've never ever, because I can't bear it.
Was it terrifying? Yeah.
Yikes! But it seemed okay. That actually, the quality of the acting was actually, for film. Some of the moments are just really contained and quiet, and I think that's very powerful. But I think it's only possible because our theater is so intimate. So yeah. Right.
Okay. For the next one, I think this is an interesting one that I think can be for both of you. Yeah, and this comes to us from May Ann Teo, who herself is a theatre maker and director. Yeah. So let me read that out for you. Thank you for this incredibly rich talkback. This is for either one of you. For this particular demographic of woman that Emily is, do you think that their situation in Singapore has or has not changed nearly 40 years later? You think women nowadays, especially, let's say,
now I think the world, women, the demographic being the woman with education and a higher income and a husband in a well-placed position, I think they've got a lot more to do nowadays. They're expected to hold down a job and also run the house and look after the children, even with the help of the servants. Ivan, what do you think?
I think that maybe the sphere, I mean, of course, the matriarch, of course, is confined to the sphere, the domestic sphere, right? She's a CEO in the household. She's multitasking. And like Stella says, now she's multitasking, even more, under greater pressure, right, to multitask. But at the same time, I mean, we just had this whole Me Too has really revealed kind of another kind of underbelly of what is actually going on in terms of the gender politics and the great inequality and the sense of entitlement men feel in the way that they can actually treat women. So I think this idea of the patriarchal society is still expressing itself in a different way. Yeah.
Yes. In other words, the load on women is still the same load, but plus they can hold down a job as well. Plus they do the job under the burden of being, what's the polite way of putting it? Being in the, what's the word? Sexual harassment and discrimination at the office. So in some ways, Emily had it better because at least everybody knew what the role was. She wasn't trying to step out of the role. She was just working within the role and manipulating it from within. Maybe it was easier.
Right. To reach the top of the particular hierarchy. Okay, this one is an interesting question by Jason Irving. This is to both Stella and Ivan. Which other character in the play do you feel also deserves his or her own monologue play? And this person is saying,
love it.
I'm rooting for a spin-off. Yeah.
Who do you like, Ivan? Who do you like?
Is there anyone who could?
Ivan, who do you like?
I love Kyung. I think
his own, huh?
I think it's really tough for him. I think he must have been also forced into marriage. I don't know, what that must have been like, and to be a man and all of it, and then, into probably something that was loveless, or they lost love at some point, and then him finding, love again with Diana. I think that's the story there, and the other story, of course, is this very interesting story of Richard, right? I mean, I have friends posting on Facebook to say, maybe Richard didn't die, right? So because he only received his ashes, so could it be that Richard, settled down with Mr. Green, and they had they lived happily ever after in Swansea, and then they had a horse riding school, or they bred champion race horses. Yes,
oh, story.
That's also a very very interesting story to kind of write.
So many.
I'd like to see a spin-off about Diana Lee. And if it's a television series, Affair with Kyung is only episode 1. She's a modern woman who perhaps she was hit on by this older man who promised her heaven and earth. And then what did he do? In the end, he dumped her. Okay, and she was maligned by, good girl was led astray, and she was maligned by Emily with such bad words. Yeah. So you have to see in later episodes.
Black magic from the
and call her a whore.
Yeah.
So in later episodes of her life, you'll see how she recovered, and perhaps I think she became a member of the Legislative Council in her own right in the end.
Wow, that's quite a story. How many? 50 episodes, you think, would cover that?
Who's going to play it? Who's going to play it, Diana? Ivan, you want to do?
I can try.
You can ask all the Emilys to take turns, I think, and make the audience forget that they are different people.
But I think that
disbelief, yeah.
In my mind, playing Emily, I mean, I may be alone on stage, but every single one of these characters that appear is a fully fleshed character.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, they're so, for me, so fully sketched that they don't appear to me as plot devices or whatever. They are really flesh and blood. Okay. Maybe we'll see this one by Brian Lowe, and I think this is a question I can throw to both of you. It says, hi Ivan, but hi Ivan and Stella also. What is one thing you want people to take away from Emily's life?
What do you think, Ivan?
That mothers always try their best, but do not necessarily know best. Mothers, that everyone wants to be loved, everyone wants to be accepted, and everyone wants to be respected, and I think and last but not least, that all our mothers were young.
Okay, that's fine. That's interesting, because Ivan answers from the point of view of the son, but I answer from the point of view of the mother. And I say the message of Emily for mothers is to, when you love your children, do you really love not who you want them to be and who you think they are, but who are they really? What do they want for themselves? That should be what you love.
Right. So not just the role, right? But who is the individual? Who is the person actually?
Yes. The person, not your image of the child, but who the child really is. That's when you allow them to go on stage or for their life and give up their law career.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much for that. I think we have around 5 minutes more. Let's see whether more questions are coming. We actually have a lot of questions. It just is a whole torrent. But I saw one. I can't pull it out. It's gone up already. But some people wanted to know whether the jokes in the play, whether they were spontaneous or whether they were written inside the script itself. I mean, were there improvisatory bits, for example? Some people wanted clarification on that. Yeah.
Yours, Ivan?
The entire Krishen and I decided to. The script is actually much longer than it is. It's actually 3 hours long. If we were to read the to play Emily moment to moment, and we kind of really made an edit to kind of tell our version, a version of Emily, but and it was actually all of it is word perfect except for 3 sections, which is a few things, which is like the latecomers, which is a moment where I tekan the latecomers, the sewing class, and the Babi Buah Keluar, and the Chinese New Year section and the marketing session, where it's improvisation. And in those sections, I turn men play women and women play men. And it's also a very interesting thing because we wanted this play to live. In many ways, we wanted to also take this play out of its museum, and make these actual moments, because they're to insist on the present, so kind of take that risk with an audience that arrived every evening,
Right.
These 3 moments, every single thing, I think was very faithful, and why not? Because I think Stella really captured the voice of Singapore, of a generation, and I think it's very important to respect that, and it's a beautiful piece of music. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a wonderful point, because as you mentioned, Ivan, when you break that fourth wall and you have this interaction with the audience, you really bring the play into the present. Because otherwise, some people might wonder, oh, this is like a period piece, it's historical, it's taking place between the 30s to the 50s, what's its relevance to me, for example. But then I think because of this bits of interaction, you really bring it to the current. Okay, I got one here by Derek Poon, and I think this is something I'll throw to both of you as well. Interesting. Do you think it would be better if the play is being acted by more than one actor and actress instead of a one-man show, instead of a monodrama? Would this play be better if it's done with more characters and more actors?
Alfian, I ask you yourself to answer that, because you are a director and playwright.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'm just a playwright. I find this point really interesting, Stella, because in researching for this play, one thing that I found out was that when you wrote those previous plays, which won the National Playwriting Competition, right, which are The Bridge and The Trial, one reason why people did not want to stage them was that the cast was very big. I think it was like 12 to 18 cast members. And I read in the interview that because of this, you decided, okay, I'll show them. They don't want such a big cast. According to them, the cast is too big and it's unstageable. I will do a one-woman play. And then when people saw that script, they also felt it was unstageable. For many of them, they had very few reference points of how to actually stage a monodrama. If you ask me, Stella, I would say as a playwright, I think the beauty of the play is the fact that it's one woman, and we hear only her point of view during this play, because this makes her this unreliable narrator.
Yes.
And as a playwright, I love that, because it's like, why is it that her husband doesn't want to see her on his deathbed? She's not telling us everything.
Yes.
So we as audience members, we have to sort of like fill in those blanks. And I think it's because you only have her on stage and you have no one else to sort of like contest her version of events. That's really what makes it so rich for me. Yeah. Right. And also an audience member. She's an unreliable narrator. She's at some point she's a little delusional. There are times when she's not conscious of what her actions are affecting the people around her. Yeah. So this will be my answer for that. Yeah. Okay. I'm afraid we have only like a minute left. So maybe I can hear some like concluding words. Okay, by the way, some of the questions I can tell these are questions like that are probably in your teacher's textbook or something like that. And
homework questions,
homework questions, students, they want to know stuff about symbolism and all that. So I think I'll skip those. But
I get those in my email sometimes.
Yeah. You do. How dare they? So this is a public service announcement. Please don't ask playwrights or directors or whatever to do your homework for you. You're studying literature for a reason, and the reason is to come up with your own powers of analysis, right? Thank you. End of public service announcement. Okay. Any concluding remarks from either of you? What do you think of the fact that this play has reached, I think, as of now, around 150,000 viewers on YouTube? So many people have watched it. What do you think it says about, let's say, Peranakan culture, the continued relevance of Peranakan culture? How do you think this story, which a lot of it is set in the past, is connecting with, say, younger millennial audiences today?
I think that Stella, it just let's just realize that good things take time, and that Stella has actually written a classic, and I'm so grateful, Stella. Seriously, I mean, it's such a gift. This is a document of our history, of our culture, for the generations to come. That a play written 40 years ago about who we are, who we were, can still ring true today. I know that, of course, there's a lot of things, there are many things there's a lot of noise at this moment going on, and what's going on in the West End, what's going on Broadway and everywhere. But I do know that, in Singapore theatre lies a certain intimacy, which really is closer to heart and home, and I think this is worth supporting. And if I may, I just want to kind of put out a call to say that, support Singapore theatre, support local companies, because they need that support, because they do work which is about us, which is about our children, which is about who we are and where we're going to. So thank you so much, Stella. Thank you so much, everyone.
And Alfian, thank you for hosting this. I can also say that, inspired by Wild Rice's effort, our company, Musical Theatre Live, has put up Emily the Musical on YouTube starting from tomorrow. Yep. So if you like to see Emily of Emerald Hill, do try Emily the Musical on YouTube tomorrow evening. Tomorrow evening. Yes.
So what do we look for? We type in Emily Musical and we should be able to find
Emily the Musical by MTL.
Okay.
Emily the Musical, MTL. Yep.
Thank you, Stella.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Stella. Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me, Ivan. Alfian, good night.
Good night.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Okay, before we go, just a final thing. We are going to show Supervision from tomorrow onwards. It's the second one in our online series of plays that we're putting online from Wild Rice. So please catch that. And at sometime next week, at the same time, we will have a Q&A about Supervision. So for those of you who watch that play, please do join us. I'm going to wrap up very soon. But again, I want to thank you, Stella, for writing such a beautiful play. It's one of those plays that, the same thing as Glen has inspired me to want to become a playwright. And I think what's beautiful about Emily, yes, I just feel it's such a classically constructed play. And I must say that it's much more than a Peranakan play. For me, it's a play about Singapore's history. And I feel that in Singapore, we are so used to milestones like Raffles came and the Japanese occupation and then independence, that there are all these gaps in between. And I've always wondered what was life like in the 30s, pre-war, post-war. And I think your really wonderful play answers so many of those questions. And, as a Singaporean, I feel so connected to this country's history through your play. Yeah, so I must say thank you again. And I want to say thank you also to everyone who has joined us tonight. Yeah, so do stay tuned for Supervision from tomorrow evening onwards at 7:30, and we'll see you again next week for another session of Q&A. So thank you once again, Stella, as well as Ivan.
Thank you, Alfian. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night. Take care. Stay home. Stay wild at home.
Yes.
Bye bye.
Stay home
Stay
and
safe.
stay safe, everyone.
Stay
Bye-bye.
wild at home.